Oh yeah, we'll get the little thing. Got it.
There we go. So I'm Doug Miller here in Montreal. I'm with Susan Stout in North Vancouver, Jane Armstrong in Toronto, and Ken Lukart in Toronto. We're here as part of the Canadian Anti-Apartheid Activist History Project, focusing on SACTU Solidarity Committee and its activities. And so Susan is our interview subject today. And I would ask you, Susan, to acknowledge that you have received, signed, and agreed to the whatever was in the consent form that we sent you, so that.
Other than the fact that I changed a word in it, but that's okay.
Okay, well, I'll take another look at it.
Well, because you said proceeding and it should have been preceding, but
anyway. Okay. And
I'm sorry, but that's one of my tips.
Oh, hey, I know. Once you write
Anyway, yes, I signed it and took a picture of it and sent it to you, and so we're all square on that.
It's great. It's great. This is a public education endeavor that we're doing here, and it's going to be open to the public, researchers and anyone who's interested. So that's why we just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is not a confidential secret thing. And but so with all that, I'd just like you to, if you would, introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, and then how you came to be aware of apartheid and actually start getting involved in anti-apartheid activities.
Okay, well, Susan Stout, born and raised in Vancouver with a couple of years in Victoria, and went to UBC, did some studies in France and Germany, and met several more Africans there. Met quite a few at UBC too, so we always got along well. So that was what took us to Ghana in 1970, was to visit people that I met in France, of all places. So.
So you were at university before 1970?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Born in 1945.
Oh, okay. We're the same generation here.
We got to be pretty close.
I'm 46. Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, so from UBC, you ended up graduating through Europe and going to Ghana. How does that expose you to apartheid?
Well, actually, being in African countries and talking to people there and the things they had gone through, even in West Africa, because the slave trade came out of there. But having gone to university with several Africans, when I started to hear more about apartheid and getting to know that it was based on Canadian reserves, which was even worse, as it were. I think it was probably Jeff Keithley that first told me about it, about the SACTU Solidarity Committee and stuff, because we were in the same union, CAW at the time. And so we were involved in other activities, whatever kind of rallies and things were going on, and we got into SACTU, and
so in fact your awareness and involvement in anti-apartheid was accelerated by your union activities.
Yeah.
Okay. And you say that was CAW. What year are you in the union then?
What was the year we switched over?
It was 84, 85.
I mean, I started working at Air Canada in 73, so and then started going to whatever kind of well, I was CALEA at that time, right? We were the Airline Employees Association, and we decided that we had to get into a union. We even looked at the postal workers, actually, but ended up in the CAW.
Okay. So that from 73.
Somewhere here, I've got an invitation to go to the meeting just as a guest when we actually declared it was CAW.
Oh, okay, so as you converted to the CAW.
Well, because we were UAW Canada first of all, and then we were
Yeah.
CAW.
Cool. Well, so then Jeff and got you involved in the SACTU Solidarity Committee. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, I think it was probably Jeff. I don't know. Virginia Downs and Eric Harms, the bus drivers, they were part of the union. They were part of SACTU. Peter Mashlangu stayed with them. Rest in peace. But
just a slight historical point, Susan. When we interviewed Jeff, we were reminded that he was part of the CCU in those days with KMO.
Oh yeah, that's right. KMO came in later, but
for the record, when you first met Jeff, he probably was with the CCU and with KMO.
Yes.
Because that's when he did the work for us. What's when you did the work for us. I can't remember exactly when I first met you. I think it may have been through CALEA, through the union, before through Jeff.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe
I don't have all those dates in my head. I guess I could look some of that stuff up. So I'm not really sure what to.
It's just a.
Yeah, no, quite true. I mean, we all came from different parts of what ended up being.
Just before you move on in years, because Ken's right, KMO didn't merge with us CCU until 1992, but in right after CALEA merged with the UAW, then CAW, in 1986, there was a concerted effort in unions across the country that we and SACTU was calling for in terms of a week of action, a boycott week of action. Do you remember the involvement of the airline workers in refusing to handle bookings and calls to South Africa?
Yeah, and in fact, there was we tried to get Air Canada to stop dealing with connections through on South African Airways. But I'd have to. I mean, any kind of a union problem there was, I was involved in it at the airport. But, and we had our first strike in '85.
Yes.
Oh boy. And so now we being the CALEA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, that was. So I did a lot of organizing of that.
So could you talk a little bit more about the week of action and how SACTU worked and you worked within it?
No, I don't think I can. I just kept doing things. That was all. But I don't remember the week of action per se.
Okay. And then
because it was '85 that we actually founded the Vancouver section of SACTU, our SACTU Solidarity Committee.
Okay. And we being whom then?
Well, as I say, there was Jeff and Virginia and Eric and
Sylvia.
Yeah.
Paul McCain.
And they represented what unions was at this point? It's still CCU, different from CAW, is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the SACTU brought people together.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
See, by that time, Bob White had written a letter to all locals in the UAW Canada, then CAW, to encourage the locals to support SACTU through the SACTU Solidarity Committee. So we began doing educational work all across the country, as we've said before. I think in that respect, we would have come across Susan early on in the early '80s. through the connections that she already had in the labor movement and her activism on that and other issues. So I'm trying to remember when I first met Susan. I did most of the traveling to BC for the education work, but it would have been in the early 80s. In fact, I remember you were so generous one time, you loaned me your car to go on one of my trips into the interior for meetings I had up in Kamloops or someplace. And we certainly appreciated that because we had no budget for travel.
Yeah, that was always the.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember taking Peter Mashlangu to the CLC winter school one time. And the CLC was not at all pleased that we were doing this anti-apartheid stuff, but we had all kinds of fun and lots of good meetings and things.
That would have been in Harrison Hot Springs.
Harrison Hot Springs, yeah.
And what was that winter school?
They did various classes. I think I was involved in the health and safety course that year, and so I made Peter part of the class, and then we got to talk to everybody.
And that was CLC sponsored, and this is SACTU, and we know how.
Yeah, but we didn't really talk SACTU. We just talked apartheid, right? Peter was wonderful. We had a lot of fun together.
That's great. That's great.
Maybe 87, 88, I'm guessing, because Peter shifted to be the ANC rep in 88. So I'm guessing it would have been 87 or early 88 with Harrison.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Harrison was used by not only the Canadian Labour Congress, but the BC Federation of Labor. It had an education.
Oh, yeah, but this was definitely a CLC.
Yes.
A CLC winter school.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, I'm just trying to find now where to go here.
Well, it was 1990 when the SACTU committee here selected me to be a member of the Western Canada tour to Southern Africa. So that's when I first got involved. We went to, well, the group divided and went different ways, but our group went to Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and then South Africa.
Is that the one that was led by Jeff that had many union representatives?
No, Jeff wasn't part of it. It's the one that was done by the Saskatchewan.
Fiona Bishop.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yes. And Barb Byers.
Barb Byers.
Yes. Okay.
Barb was kind of so that was my first time in Southern Africa.
1990. So that's after Nelson Mandela has been released.
Yeah, well, having read his book, I guess he was released before that we didn't really know about, because he was out of the prison, off the island. But anyway, it was the first ANC convention with Nelson Mandela, and Barb and Bafo, Bangumzi, Bafo Nyanga,
yes,
traveling on a Ghanaian passport.
Susan, help me remember, who organized that trip? Was that organized by the people on their own in Saskatchewan? Barb?
Yeah,
and,
it was what union was it?
SGEU?
It wasn't the grain workers. The grain workers were the ones that got me into Mozambique, but
yeah. No, but
yeah.
Fiona and Barb were with the Saskatchewan Government Employees Union.
Yeah.
So,
and I've probably got something here in the paperwork, but but anyway, it was, that was the one where we ended up down in East London for a big rally, and Barb got to speak and introduced Bafo, and this young kid comes flying over we were sort of in a separate section, and she comes flying over it into Baffo's arms. His daughter didn't know that he was in the country, and
Oh boy,
it was that was really
that must have been truly special.
but that was then when we were leaving East London. The idea was that Baffo and Barb would fly up to Johannesburg and be part of the ANC convention. And we got to the airport, and Baffo went with a couple of friends in their car, and we had his luggage and checked it in when we checked in Barb's luggage. And then Baffo and his friends arrived, and the cops immediately circled them and grabbed him and took him away.
Oh boy.
And so we didn't see him again until we were on the plane heading home. His idea was he was going to stay there until Christmas, but he came with us on the flight, and they had, I mean, I know Jeff did a lot of work, and probably the rest of you did too, to get him out of prison, but they'd only let him out if he got out of the country, so.
That's the first time I've heard that story. Amazing.
Yeah, well, he pulled into the parking lot, stepped out of, or at least the guys did, stepped out, and they took all the stuff out of the trunk, which was really very minor paperwork. I mean, it wasn't anything revolutionary or anything, right? And then apparently they tear gassed him in the little cell they had him in, because we were traveling side by side on the flight coming home, and he kept rubbing his ear and what's going on? And then he showed me, and all the skin was peeled away from the side of his head where they tear gassed right on the side of his head.
And was that because he wasn't on a South African document, or?
No, they knew he was part of the anti-apartheid movement. I mean, they knew his real name. You know, I mean and they were. The cops were around us all the time that we were in Joburg. One evening, Barb and some of the women from SACTU organized an evening in one of our hotel rooms, and the head of the SACTU Women's Committee and Barb were in the center of the room, as it were, talking, and the rest of us were singing, you know, Nkosi Sikulele and all the rest of it. And one of the women on our tour, Louise, was Cree, and the cops had not recognized the fact that she was part of this white tour. So the next day in the lunch, you know, the restaurant in the hotel, she had arrived early and was sitting over to one side, and the cops were at the table next to her, and they were complaining bitterly about these damn women that they couldn't hear anything that was going on because they were making so much noise singing, which of course was why we were making so much noise singing. But then Louise started to laugh, and so she straightened herself up and got up and walked away, and then found us and just absolutely burst out laughing. She thought it was hilarious to hear these guys. But it was interesting because I did a lot of the driving when we were in South Africa, and so after that meeting, I drove the women home into the township, and they said, well, you know, like so-and-so lives right across the little valley from me, but it'll take you a while to get there, because they had deliberately dug trenches and things at the ends of roads so that if the cops were chasing them, they could run through, but there was no way the cops could drive through, right? And so the women knew what order to do it in, and they just told me where to go. you know, drop this one first and then go around and that one and then around and that one. And then I got to the last one and she said, now you just wait here and I'll get my husband to get his car to lead you out because you'll never find your way on your own.
Wow. Wow.
But yeah, no, it was.
Well, that was probably as important time in the anti-apartheid struggle as any, because it was such a vicious reactionary struggle from 1990 to 94 going on there, and so.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I mean, walking in Joburg and you'd see as you're going along the street, the cops are up on the hill beside you, right, following you along, and if a young black fellow would be coming along the sidewalk, he'd immediately get off, right, because he could be accused of attacking a white woman. It just made me ill. And then when I went back in '94, I'd be walking along the street and a young black fellow would be coming along and he'd say, "Yay, mama!" and do a high five. And you know, of course, I'm inclined to walk anywhere and talk to people, so I wandered around Johannesburg in '94 with no problem. But I was staying in the apartment of an Indian South African who had moved in with his girlfriend, and his sister and husband were involved in the group that I was doing health and safety with, and they lived in the same building. So every once in a while, their mother would come, and so she'd stay with me. And we'd go for a walk, and she'd say, well, I'm not sure we should go this way. Oh, I've been through there before. She saw parts of Johannesburg she'd never seen. Yeah, no.
Susan, do you have any memorabilia in your collection from that trip? Photographs, Bafu, et cetera, that maybe you could contribute to the archival project?
Yeah, you know, I sent a lot of them to the 1990 group. So Barb has a lot of them. Barb Byers has a lot of them.
I think Fiona also has some stuff.
Yeah, well, we did a Zoom in 2020, right? Our 30-year anniversary.
Okay.
So, and I've got the emails for all that group. If you want them, I can send them to you. Was
that recorded by any chance, the Zoom?
I don't know.
Okay.
We were just so busy having fun, I wasn't paying attention to that kind of stuff. I just, you know.
What would be useful is I'll try and reach out to Barb about photographs, but if you could email me the list of the people, and if you can remember their unions that were involved in the 1990 trip, that will really help also with the identity.
Yeah, no, I can send you the email list for them. They'd be perfectly happy to be part of it.
All right, great. Because it will help also with the identification of people in the photographs. I'll ask Barb to do that if she could, but that would be useful because that's one of the.
Yes, yeah, I've got a selection of photographs with.
A little higher? Little higher.
Higher and
good.
Me with curly hair.
Oh yes, I remember that.
But yeah.
So where was?
I'm not sure whether that was Mozambique or no. I think it probably was South Africa. Because obviously that was where I taught a class anyway, because we've got everybody's getting their certificate. Got the whole class, but I don't have any names on them. And
oh wow,
it's good. It'd be great.
But I mean, certainly I can send you those pictures.
Oh, please.
Remember at least whether they were. Challenge your memory to at least identify whether they were Mozambique or South Africa.
Oh yeah, no, it is South Africa. This is one of the ones that when they used to put the dates on the bottoms of the pictures.
Oh, okay, excellent.
Definitely, 94.
All right, okay.
So that was the class. Yeah.
And you were there as a CAW educator.
Yeah, that one was, yeah, the one in Mozambique was with CUSO, but it was health and safety too.
Aimed at union people as well?
Yeah. I mean, Mozambique was quite a different experience because the Portuguese had been kicked out, right? Except that the bastards had done things like destroy elevators in buildings. You know, you'd have a high rise, but they'd destroy through cement down the elevator shaft before they left, and things like that, so that it could never be used. I stayed with Ken Hansen when I was in.
Ken Hansen was another unionist, or?
Yeah. He was in Mozambique for years, and yeah.
Was Don
that Green Services?
Sorry?
That
was the Green Services, yeah. They
Yeah.
organized that, and then CUSO. Right. Tony Wolforth got me involved in that one. And,
okay. All right. I remember we had several schools for CUSATU unionists up at Port Elgin in the early 90s that was organized as well around occupational health and safety. That was, they didn't need anything around politics or how to run a union.
No.
They could have taught us a big deal.
I mean,
we didn't get schools with them, but occupational health and safety was one thing they really wanted.
Well, yeah, and in South Africa, we wrote a health and safety course. In Mozambique, it was more hands-on in various places, and we were in the Coca-Cola plant, and you know, going through the kinds of things that, well, we had been there in 1990, so some of the people recognized me and showed me things that they had changed in the meantime. But in Mozambique, the government and the union were the same thing for a lot of people. I mean, so they didn't want to oppose the government because they'd kicked the Portuguese out, right? And so they were on side, and so you'd go to a workplace and there would be a trailer set up that had the union office in it, and right next to it was the party office, and very often the union rep was also a government rep of some kind.
Sounds like our Senate.
And I remember the one fellow in the printing union. Of course, they had, in their health and safety, they had written things up so that you could retire early because you were bound to have lead poisoning, right? And so they had some decent stuff, but it was ergonomics more than anything that was the problem. They'd often be doing either bending or trying to reach up to things, or they'd get a high stool, but then they wouldn't have anywhere to put their feet. They'd get old telephone books and stack them up so that, because the stools didn't have any kind of footrest or anything on them. But those were the kind of things we talked through, and how you were bending and twisting.
Can I take you, Susan, back to Vancouver and the SACTU committee that was formed out there that you were part of, along with a number of others? Do you remember organizing benefits at the Maritime Labour Centre? Anniversaries of SACTU and fundraising benefits, you know, with speakers and music, etc. Do you remember any of that?
I wouldn't have done any of the organizing for that. I'd have attended, but.
Okay. Okay. I just wondered if you're involved. There were several sort of 2 or 3 years that they did.
Yeah, no, the Maritime Labor Center, the unions working out of there were all on side very much.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember Paul McCain and I being down at the wharfs when a Zim ship came in.
Oh, really?
I mean, several different times, I guess, but this one particular time, we were on foot because you couldn't be driving around there and getting into the things that, and a security guy was trying to follow us in his car, but of course we were just ducking behind something and around something else, and then like in South Africa, right? You couldn't get through there with a vehicle. You could get through on foot. So we did a lot of it, and we've done anti-Zim stuff lately too, because of Palestine, right?
Right.
It continues on.
Yes.
That's an interesting link. That the people who were involved then are now still.
A lot of us are still involved in the Palestine issue. Yeah. But there's lots of young ones involved, which is really encouraging. And,
oh wow! Yes.
I mean, even anti-war and stuff. There's a lot more young ones than that in-between generation there somewhere that kind of fell by the wayside. There's us, and then there's the 20-somethings.
and are they? Do you know? Do they have union links, or are they gig workers, or what?
No, I don't. I mean, a lot of them. The original bunch, Sid Schneid, I'm sure most of you know, are unionists. But the new ones. It's not the union that's brought them in. It's the issue.
The issue.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we will be interviewing Sid soon.
Sorry?
We will be interviewing Sid Schneid soon. We haven't set a date with him yet. But
oh yeah. Okay.
do you remember anything else about the subcommittee in Vancouver that you could share with us?
Do you remember where you met?
Oh, different people's houses.
Oh, okay. All right.
Probably Virginia and Eric's as often as any.
What's Virginia's last name?
I was way out here in Deep Cove and nobody wanted to go that far afield.
Yes.
What's Virginia's last name?
Downs.
Downs, right, okay.
Okay.
And were these meetings frequent?
Yeah, well, if there was something special, or probably we had monthly meetings, and I have more names, but they're not going through. I've got them on my list, on another list too. So, but you've already talked to Jeff, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Were you involved at all with the Vancouver and District Labour Council? Because they were always very progressive, as was Cup W. Everett Hoogers was the president.
Oh yeah, Everett was great, and Marion Pollock is still involved in a lot of stuff.
Yes, we're hoping to interview both of them.
Oh, good, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Did you go as a delegate to the?
I was a delegate. Yeah.
That's
for a while.
I had yes, a memory that you were a delegate for a while at from CAW out there.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And do you remember anything about BC Federation of Labor conventions and anti-apartheid debates or discussions or resolutions?
Well, I know we used to make a point of singing Kosasitulele at conventions. I don't think I've got any. I'll go through this stuff again and see what else there is besides these pictures that you might be interested in.
You used to keep buttons and pins. You were a real collector.
Well, I guess I do still have some of the buttons. Do you want me to dig them out too?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. The Library and Archives Canada is extremely interested, not only in things like the newsletters that we sent them and whatever correspondence we've been able to locate, but also in paraphernalia, buttons, posters. There was a calendar that we put out in 1981. And I suspect I probably convinced Tom Saunders to order enough to send them out to the various districts. They used to be called districts in CALEA at the time. Yeah. To buy them, because of course they were another fundraising tool for us. But we haven't found one of those yet. I remembered it was photographs that were representative of something that had happened in South Africa in that month, whether it was the Sharpeville massacre or whatever it was. But we haven't found one of those. But they're really interested in the whole spectrum, including T-shirts. And we've found, remarkably enough, 2 or 3 that people have kept over all these decades. So if you have a chance to go through your collection and find anything from that period.
I think I've still got some buttons. And I've got another story I have to tell you.
Oh, please.
As we're leading up to the election, and of course the pro-apartheids are telling all these stories about how the tribes are fighting one another, etc. You can't leave it to the blacks because they'll just separate the whole thing. Anyway, one of the women that was working with me on the health and safety stuff had a 5-year-old son, and they were over one evening, and I didn't have any notepaper or anything lying around, but I wanted to keep this little guy busy. I gave him pieces of old newspaper and stuff that had just enough edging, that there was room for him to, and he's busy drawing things, and I can see that he's got a car on this one and something else, and then he comes over to me and he says, "Susan, you want to see me draw a boat?" And so I've seen all these cars, and then, sure, let's see it.
Oh, yeah?
Want to see me draw another one? Do this over this hand. He's drawing an X.
A vote.
He's a vote.
Oh, a vote. Okay.
A vote. Yes.
And yes. I said, and who are you going to vote for? Mandela. And I said, why are you going to vote for him? Because he'll build houses and he'll build schools. 5 years old, and he had the whole story.
Oh boy, that's powerful.
In both Mozambique and South Africa, anytime you had any kind of a union organizing, whatever kind of a meeting, everybody brought their kids.
Yes.
I mean, they heard it all right from the time they were nothing, right? And so, they would be sitting very quietly next to mom or dad, drawing or just listening or whatever. And the only time they moved was if they had to go to the washroom, right? And they'd go and whisper in mom's ear, and she'd have to take them off to the washroom. But aside from that, kids were always involved in everything. And they were just part of it. It was, it was good times.
Wow.
Good times.
Fantastic. Well, I'd like to just repeat the request that if you have any lists of names or other pieces of memorabilia that are available, this project has started to blossom in so many ways, and all of this is good stuff to add. Anybody got other questions?
Not really.
I think.
Did we ever do an educational with your unit in Vancouver, the airline unit? I can't remember. I don't think we did.
I don't.
We had support because of activists like you, but and
Yeah.
leadership of the local. But I just can't remember doing an educational work with your unit.
It would have been very difficult for two reasons. They work 24/7 pretty much shifts. So in order to get enough people together to do something like that, it had to be on a lost time basis, which means the union would pay their wages so that they could go to an educational, whether it was occupational health and safety or whatever. Occasionally we would have, they did have membership meetings, but they were always a struggle to sometimes they had to do 2 or 3 to cover various shifts.
Yeah, that's right.
You have maybe 10 or 15 people at one meeting, and then you'd have another meeting 3 hours later when the shift came off. It was the nature of airline work that was, it was challenging in terms of continually organizing within the union.
It was, No, I mean, the only time we had a chance to really organize was when we were on strike. I mean, then you could really...
Yes, everybody was out, everybody met each other. It was quite remarkable because people who didn't know each other, if they worked on an opposite shift.
Yeah.
And that strike, just one anecdote with it, we had no strike fund. And we were out for 3 weeks, as I recall. And Tom Saunders had a heart attack, was in the hospital. So Bob White stepped in because we were already in negotiations to merge with the CAW, stepped in and said, we're going to make sure you don't starve. The company doesn't starve you out. So we will start as the CAW to pay you strike fund. And we are going to do a presser to let the company know this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to back up the picket lines, yada, yada. And I think we settled about 2 days later, as I recall.
No, we did get members out, because I was worried that we wouldn't get members out to strike, but boy, they came. And I remember taking them, because the reservations office was in the same building as the Board of Trade. And we're walking, and I said, look, we want to walk past the over the driveway, across the driveway. Why do you want to do that? They were just wanted to circle around in front. I said, cross the driveway. Teamster truck arrives, turns around and leaves, right? Because we're on the driveway. And that was the first time that a lot of them recognized the power of a union. That was the first time that they realized that other unions would respect their picket line. And the Board of Trade wasn't getting any food.
That's even better.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was, and I remember the manager in reservations at the time was a real twerp, and a little bit of a guy. And we were picketing on the floor of reservations outside the elevator, but we were outside of Air Canada, right? But we were in front of the elevator right there. If people came up with deliveries and they were unionized, they wouldn't deliver. It was good. And he called the cops. So I went down to the lobby, and these 2 cops arrived. So I explained to them what was going on, that we were just wandering around in front of the elevator. We weren't going into the building, into the offices. And then I rode up the elevator with them. And here's the manager. He comes out, and they stood one on either side of him, like so close, and they're looking down on him, right? I mean, he has to look up to talk to them. And they said they'd tell us not to interfere with business, but we were perfectly legal in front of the elevator.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, you get some good stories. So.
Wow. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much, Susan, and we really appreciate getting these stories, and they're forming a really rich picture of what was going on over that time and the kind of people that were involved. So I'm so glad that we had this chance to pull it together. And I thank you so much for it. So if everybody's okay, I'll turn the recording off now.
Yeah, I think we've probably.
One last question.
Oh, okay. One last question.
So, do you think you would have ended up going to South Africa in 1990 and later on in 1994 if it wasn't for all the work that happened in the unions and with the SACTU support committee and what was happening at the time in the union movement in BC and across the country for that matter?
Well, I mean,
do you think that's what gave you the knowledge, the inspiration to participate?
Well, you know, my original inspiration probably came from my mother, who was about as anti-racist as you could be. And so, I mean, we always had members of different origin in the house. I mean, there was always people coming to visit and stuff. So, so I'm sure that Mom had something to do with saying that. I mean, her best friend in school was Japanese. Now we're talking back in 1920, right, or earlier. So, so that's probably what got me feeling comfortable with talking to people from anywhere. The union gave me the impetus to do it. I wouldn't have had the money to go on these trips by myself, but then I was working for Air Canada, and at that time Air Canada actually supplied me with a confirmed ticket as far as London to go on the trips. So I paid standby on whatever other airlines to get me the rest of the way, because I wasn't going to spend full fare.
So did you approach
You're an airline person, you don't pay full fare for anything.
No, did you approach Air Canada
Yeah.
for the project and you didn't have a problem? They said they would support?
Yeah, yeah.
It's amazing how things changed after 1990, isn't it? And the delegates released. All of a sudden, the communist boogeyman, things changed and companies were.
Well, I got one more story about the election too. As I say, the apartment I was staying in, the fellow that actually owned it came around after the election. Oh, I got a second story too. And we all had to go to the corner bar, or this particular bar, to celebrate. And we walk in the door, and this young white guy, yeah, it's 30s probably, comes flying at him, throws his arms around him, and says, "I voted, I voted." It was the first time he had ever voted. He had refused to vote until that election.
Oh yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, he had never voted, and he's telling this to an Indian South African, right? I mean, he'd obviously been in conversation with these people all the time, and he was like this neighbor of mine. He was working against apartheid, and he was just so excited that he finally had a chance to vote. But the other story I should tell you is I was helping to set up the polling station in our local area, and the woman I was with suddenly said, "Oh, I forgot the such and such, and this fellow has it, right? And we've got like 5 minutes." And so we head over there, and pounding up the stairs of his apartment, and he almost jumped out the window because the sound of footsteps, we never even thought that the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs was bound to be the cops.
Yeah.
And he was ready to jump, except that from halfway up she yelled, and he recognized the voice.
Wow.
But
so the fear was still palpable as late as that.
Oh, well, I mean, the Boers stole a bunch of ballots so that people were lined up for hours and hours and hours till they tried to get ballots into various areas. But the people that were lined up were from various tribes, and they were all singing together and dancing together as they waited in the line. And I had a CAW shirt on, something or other, and it actually said Canada on it, just because I needed it for the particular day. And people were trying to find out whether I was there as a, like Jeff was. Jeff was there to watch the election. But I was just there because it was fun to be there. I was talking to the kids and walking up and down and singing with them and whatever. It was quite a day. It was quite a day.
Oh, that would be an impressive thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you again, Susan.
I think of all the stuff I've forgotten, and I'll write you some emails.
Well, there's always a possibility of follow-up. If you have more energy and recall, then we can always come back.
Okay, well, I'll get some of this stuff together and send me where you want it to be sent, because I guess you guys want to look at it first.
Well, not necessarily, but I'll send you an email about what to do and how to package it up, because we're gathering. Jeff is sending me some stuff, others as they find things. Laurel Ritchie, we've interviewed, and she's found some stuff from the 80s, including, old newspaper articles from the chemical and textile workers, which she was part of the battle in Perron.
Yeah.
About SACTU, and I can't remember who it was in the photographs, but everybody's gathering this up, and we're hoping to make yet another deposit to the archives in the fall as we gather all these together. Okay. Yeah, I'll send you an email.
But you've already got this, have you?
Yes. Yes, that one's gone in.
Yes, and the archives their preference is not to have duplicates because they've only got so much space. So we're trying to watch that, but in some cases we'll end up with some duplicates, I'm sure. If you run across pamphlets or any of that kind of thing, if you're going through stuff from the 1980s, that's invaluable. That kind of material that's got a union logo on it, or an old CALEA newsletter if you kept any of those. Oh, what's that? Oh, okay, sure. Yes. Anything like that had to do with unions and the time in South Africa, but particularly the 1980s is what we're trying to track down, because a lot of it is disappearing or has permanently disappeared.
Yeah.
But any of that would be great, terrific. Because it's not there in the archives at all. Any of the union involvement, I've done a lot of checking. And so that's why they're eager to get it. It's just not there. And yet it was a huge part of the anti-apartheid work in the country.
Okay. Well, once again, then I'm going to move us along, and I say thank you again, Susan. Thanks, Jane and Ken, for being here with me. And we'll be in touch. I'm going to turn the recording off.